shortly. Please be seated and kindly turn off or set your smartphone to silent mode throughout the event. Your cooperation is highly appreciated. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. I bid to your excellencies, our invited speakers, distinguished presenter and participant. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Husnia and it is my pleasure to be your MC for POWERCON 2022. Without further ado, I would like to invite Professor in Senior Dr. Zainal Abidin to introduce our third keynote speaker for today. Please welcome Professor in Senior Dr. Zainal Abidin.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to all. I hope that you had, good time yesterday and also last night. Maybe walking around the city center and also enjoy the food. I believe so. So today I'm going to be the chair for these sessions, and my name is Zainal from UPM. So we are so fortunate to have Mr. Wayne Bishop with us today to deliver keynote number 3 with the title Trends and Transformations of the Electric Power Industry. But before that, let me give a quick introductions of Mr. Wayne Bishop Jr. So Wayne Bishop Jr. is a Senior Director of Industry Outreach at Quanta Technology, a subsidiary of Quanta Services, a Fortune 500 company. Wayne also served as Executive Advisor of LUMA Energy, the electric utility in Puerto Rico. In addition, Wayne served as IEEE PES Vice President of Meetings and Conferences, a member of the IEEE Power and Energy Governing Board, and a member of the IEEE PES Executive Committee. So as Vice President, he has overall responsibility of all IEEE PES conferences and meetings worldwide. He also helped write and implement the long-range strategic plan for IEEE PES and is a senior member of IEEE. Previously, Wayne worked at OMICRON Electronics for 13 years, where he was the head of marketing for North America. Prior to that, Wayne was employed at Doble Engineering Company for more than 16 years in several senior management positions. In 2007, he was appointed by Doble's board of directors to serve on the committee to broker the sale of Doble Engineering to ESCO Technologies. Wayne Bishop Jr. is a graduate of Merrimack College, Harvard University, and Southwood University in Boston. And currently, Wayne and his family reside in the suburbs of Boston in the US. So without further ado, let us give a round of applause to Mr. Wayne.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, and good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I'll adjust the mic here. First, I want to thank the local organizing committee for POWERCON for inviting me here and for the excellent organization they've done to put on POWERCON. It's a conference that all of you should be very, very proud of. The outstanding technical program the venue and just very, very well organized. So some of you are probably wondering, well, he's given the keynote address. Why is he dressed like this? So someone just told me in the elevator, a story is better than a suit. So here you go. Here's the story. I flew here on Saturday, left Saturday morning, went from the itinerary was Boston to Seattle, Seattle to South Korea, and South Korea to Malaysia. When I arrived on the flight, Jessica Bean and I were on the same flight. We walked down the jetway in Malaysia, and waiting for us at the end of the jetway was this gentleman, very nicely dressed. He had a big sign. We've seen these signs before at airports, right, with the people's names on them. And it said in big letters, Wayne Bishop Jr. So I thought to myself, wow, the organizers from PowerCon told me they were going to arrange a ride from the airport. I never thought they would have this greeting at the end of the jetway. This is quite amazing. And so the gentleman said to me, are you Wayne Bishop Jr.? And I said, yes, I am. He said, well, unfortunately, sir, we have some bad news. So I looked at him after getting off a flight of 20-something hours. I was tired as it was, right? And he said, your luggage is stuck in the US. And I said, what? My luggage is stuck in the US. So here I am with my backpack, nothing else at all after 20 plus hours. So I said, oh, well, okay. I was so tired at that point, I wasn't upset. He said, here, you need to sign this, and he gave me an envelope. So I had just watched an episode on the flight over from The Sopranos. And so I thought to myself, he's giving me an envelope full of cash. It was a big load of money. So I said, oh, this isn't bad. It's a big stack of bills. Well, lo and behold, I found out it was only US $50 to cover my clothes. So I said, well, $50 isn't going to get me very much. So Jessica and I were at the airport, and I said, well, it's midnight right now. There's no way I'm going to find any clothing stores open. There's a Hugo Boss. Let's go in there. So Jessica and I went in, and she helped me pick out an outfit. I got a shirt, pair of pants, underwear, socks. Off I am, and here I am. So I'm told hopefully tonight I will receive my baggage. But how many, a show of hands, have lost their bags before in travel? Has anybody else? Whoa. Wow. I think it's almost the majority. Okay. So we've all had this experience. So I'm going to propose to our IEEE PES publications that we do a publication on lost baggage and how, as engineers, we deal with this, because there's got to be a better solution. So let's go to the next slide. And so who am I? I was born in Brockton, Massachusetts, which is a city south of Boston, Mass. I've lived in the United States my whole life, although I've traveled to every state in the US except for North Dakota and South Dakota. So I've been to Alaska several times, and Hawaii and everywhere else, and I've traveled around the world. And in traveling around the world, I have to say the Malaysian people are full of hospitality, kindness, and I felt so at home here. So thank you so much. So I've worked in the electric power industry for 30 plus years. And the reason why I got into the electric power industry is through my dad. My father was at Doble Engineering for 47 years. He's now retired. He was the vice president of operations. And I didn't know Mr. Doble. He died 1 year before I was born in 1969, but my father actually lived with Mr. and Mrs. Doble while he was going to school. So he's a graduate of Northeastern University and BU, Boston University, and he went to school at night and worked at Doble during the day. So I sort of grew up with the industry. I moved all around the company, doing everything from wave soldering and using a soldering iron on PC boards on the production floor, to working in the stock room, to working in client service, to eventually, after graduating from college, overseeing the Doble Services program, which included the Doble Client Conference. And I was telling a few of our colleagues here earlier that I remember at the Doble Conference back in the 1990s, T&B would always attend the Doble Client Conference and make presentations and give some wonderful experiences of what was happening over here. And I know in the States, we were always interested in hearing a presentation from T&B. They're a highly and well-regarded utility today. So I worked at Doble until about 2007, when it was sold to another company called ESCO, and I left there and opened up a Boston office for OMICRON Electronics, where I stayed there for an additional 15 years, heading up marketing for North America. And working at OMICRON really opened my eyes to the industry and worldwide travel, and seeing that they're an Austrian company, I was able to get over to Europe quite a bit and go to some exciting events like Middle East Electricity and in Dubai, and travel over to our offices in China and so forth. So it was a wonderful experience. And then this year, Dr. Damir Novosil offered me a job to come on board to Quanta Technology, and that's where I'm working today. But I joke with Damir that I was really on a working interview with him for 10 years because of our work and knowing each other, working together as volunteers on the IEEE PES board and so forth. And as Jessica said yesterday, it really is a family. I mean, it really is at the end of the day a family. And you hear the expression, it's a small world. Well, it's an even smaller industry. And a show of hands, how many PES members do we have here? IEEE PES members. Okay, so if you're not a member already, Jessica outlined yesterday some great benefits. And one of the best benefits that I see are two. Number one, the PES Resource Center. There are thousands of papers and articles and videos and presentations that you can view on there. And with the loss of expertise happening in our industry these days, that resource is now important now more than ever. You can type in IEC 62850 and see all the presentations that were made on this new communication protocol that's being introduced across our industry, right? On particularly for digital substations. And you can see all the different experiences. So that's number one. Number two, it's your lifelong sounding board. So you will meet colleagues and friends that you've met now for life that you can bounce ideas off of, talk with, say, well, what do you think about this? What has your experience been with that? And that sounding board is a global sounding board around the world. So if you haven't joined already, I urge you to take a look at IEEE PES. The photos here, the one on the left is my dad and I back in the early 90s. I was in charge of the launch for a product that Doble had just introduced called the M4000. And that was used to test transformers in the field. It was a field test instrument. At the time, it was considered state-of-the-art because it was automated. It did all the various tests on transformers, excitation current, transformer turns ratio, power factor, capacitance. It would do leakage reactance, looking at the winding deformation of transformers, and you could even do other advanced tests with it as well. And so we launched that test set back in the 90s. And the photo way over on the right was taken in the late 90s, and that was the gentleman with me is from KEPCO, Korean Electric Power Company, and they would come over to the United States every year, and I was sort of their host each year, and they would attend the Doble Client Conference. And the photo in the middle is more recent, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I was giving a paper at the general meeting, the IEEE PES general meeting. So that's a little bit about me. Next. So lots of exciting things happening right now in our industry, of course, but it's an industry that's rich in history, as Jessica pointed out yesterday. The grid is an engineering triumph and the largest machine in the world. And some would also say the greatest machine in the world. The greatest engineering achievement of the 20th century, according to the National Academy of Engineering. Our lives depend on the reliable flow of electricity, and electric power is the backbone of our worldwide economy. I think now more than ever, electric power, with all of our devices in our homes and in our schools and at work, we need the reliable delivery of electric power. Next. So our industry is undergoing more changes now in the next 10 years than we've undergone in the last 100 years. Our dependence on electric power will only continue to grow. By 2045, Southern California Edison, one of the largest utilities in the United States, expects peak load to increase by 40%. According to the United States Energy Information Administration, by 2050, global energy usage will increase nearly 50% compared with 2020. Renewables will be the primary source for new generation, but natural gas, some coal, and batteries especially will be used to meet load and support reliability. Natural gas production will increase worldwide to help meet key demand markets. And the chart over on the right from the EIA shows the worldwide energy consumption by source 2020 compared to 2050. Next. So this was interesting. I saw this on Electric Perspectives magazine put out by EEI, and on the cover he states from AEP, which is American Electric Power, energy is the future of everything. And it really is. Energy is the future of everything. When you think about it, when I first got into the industry in the early 1990s, nobody really talked about our industry, right? We had generation, transmission, distribution. Everything was very, very regulated. Customers were not even called customers. They were called ratepayers back then. And we kind of went on, and people really didn't know what engineers did back then, right? Now you can open up any newspaper, any magazine, and there's always an article in every issue of every newspaper or every magazine about something happening in the power and energy industry, right? And in our industry. And that's what makes it so exciting. Next. So it really is the future of everything. Just some of the key words that we see happening these days that we hear about: net zero, the race to net zero, energy storage, microgrids, electrification, grid modernization, DERs, distributed energy resources, solar, wind, battery storage, energy storage, and of course the big word is decarbonization. Next. Well, we see more evidence of climate change around the globe, so this is the big challenge. And these photos that I've taken have really just been taken over the last couple of weeks, with the exception of the one in the middle that talks about the thousands flea wildfires in France, southern France. All of the others were taken within the last 2 weeks. Australia, they have seen their wildfires impact. The photo in the middle with the SUV was taken in Louisiana. They've had some massive floods in Louisiana. The photo on the right, upper right-hand corner, you know about Pakistan, the floods, the thousands of people that have died as a result of this. On the left, we've had excessive heat advisories, excessive heat warnings in the U.S. Lake Mead and some of our lakes in the U.S. are down to record lows. The Hoover Dam, which delivers power to, I think, 7 different states, is in jeopardy of not being able to produce electricity in the future if things don't improve, because the water levels are so low. And in the right, lower right-hand corner, you see 46 million facing dangerous heat in the West, record-shattering heat wave, raging wildfires, scorching heat, and blackout threats. We've had severe water shortages up in the Northeast. I was born and have lived my whole life in Massachusetts, and we've never had droughts like we're currently having. So all of this means one thing, and that is that our industry is being transformed rapidly because of the urgency to address climate change. And all of us in this room have a part in helping to deal with that issue. And it's more than a trend, it's really a crisis. And the president of Southern California Edison called climate change just that recently in a report that he issued to the regulators, stating that climate change is in fact a crisis and something that we all have to be involved and deal with. Next. So in terms of the other trends happening, $3.5 trillion is expected to be invested in new, primarily clean energy infrastructure in the United States between 2023 and 2035, according to an analysis by Princeton University's repeat project. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, has forecasted that the transition to EVs alone, electric vehicles alone, will lead to a 20 to 38% increase in electricity consumption by 2050. Next. So electric vehicles, utilities see adoption of EVs as a way to stabilize and maintain load growth, and more importantly, reduce our carbon footprint. One of the interesting things that's happened up until recently, Massachusetts, for example, actually had negative load growth. Like many of you, my wife and I took all of our incandescent light bulbs out, replaced them with LEDs. So you went from 75 watts down to 9 watts. We bought energy efficient appliances, replaced the old ones. We were given rebates to do that through the local utility. So the utilities kind of had a double-edged sword. They were trying to say, well, okay, let's replace everything with more efficiency. But at the same time, that meant a reduction in load growth. And what also happened, of course, is all of the solar and wind that we've had installed in Massachusetts. But now EVs will be a way of restoring that growth, so bringing stability to that load. The number of EVs on the US roads is projected to reach 26.4 million in 2030, and nearly 12.5 million EV charge ports will be needed to support the projected 26.4 million EVs that will be on the US roads in 2030. I just took these two photos on Friday, actually. One of them is in my driveway at home. Our neighbor just purchased the new Ford F-150 Lightning. It's the all-electric truck. So they brought it by to show us the truck, and one of the kids in the back of the truck is my daughter. And the inside of the truck, you'll see a monitor, sort of. It looks almost like a Tesla monitor. It's probably about this long, and nice wide monitor. Very simple but sleek vehicle, and I was quite impressed by it. I think the range, she told me, is around 300 miles. So next. There's a waiting list, I think somebody told me, in the US of like 100,000 people for these new F-150 trucks. The adoption of electric vehicles continues to rise, representing the biggest challenge, but yet also an opportunity facing the utility industry today. On the one hand, EVs provide a tremendous source of new revenue generation, and the industry must move quickly to enable the construction of a robust charging infrastructure. But on the other hand, EVs also pose a threat to grid stability and decarbonization. Next. A lot of the utilities in the US and around the world are adopting all-electric bucket trucks. Here you see a photo of Xcel Energy. They're located in Colorado and Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they plan to electrify all of their light-duty trucks and 30% of their medium and heavy-duty fleet by 2030. Next. So reimagining the grid. Southern California Edison has put out this great white paper. If you just Google reimagining the grid, SCE, it'll come up. It's a great paper. I think it's probably 30 or 40 pages long, but a few highlights from it. They say in the paper, we need an electric grid that enables efficient integration of clean energy resources while also ensuring climate adaptation and broader resilience. Acute events, wildfires, flooding, mudslides, storms, wind gusts, like I showed earlier on the earlier slide, and chronic stresses, these extreme temperatures, the droughts, etc., will impact operating performance and put grid assets under increased stress and risk of deterioration or failure. And you have to consider, I certainly saw this at Doble and also at OMICRON, we already have an aging infrastructure as it is, particularly in the US. We haven't been as good in the US, quite frankly, of replacing our assets, mainly our transformers, compared to other countries around the world. And so to put these additional stress on the grid already that's fragile could be a breaking point. Next. For California, compared to today, in 2045, we'll see a 60% increase in electricity demand and a 40% increase in peak load. To satisfy this growth and get this power to customers across California, the grid will need to integrate 80 gigawatts of wind and solar and 30 gigawatts of storage at the bulk power level via existing and new transmission infrastructure. And the two photos were taken last year when I was out to see Hawaiian Electric 3 years ago, actually, I'm sorry, 2019. I was at a solar field, and the solar field was actually, a solar farm, was actually an old sugarcane farm that they had made into a solar farm. Next. Hawaii has a lot of renewable infrastructure, as we know. The way in which we provide or produce, distribute, and consume power will be cleaner, cheaper, and infinitely more complex within the next decade. And this point is important. For us to be successful on decarbonization, all parties must collaborate. And IEEE PES is doing their best to bring the parties together, to discuss this, to talk about it, to find common ground, to share experiences. And they're the electric utilities, independent suppliers, government bureaucracies, politicians, academics, and most of all, the communities, the end consumer, the customer. Next. Smart cities is another big trend we see happening. How many are familiar with smart cities and what's comprised of that? Show of hands. So a few. Okay, well, okay, so it's maybe it's not as popular outside the US. It's definitely something that IEEE PES has been involved with. So a little bit about it. By 2050, this is an interesting fact which supports us being involved with smart cities. 70% of the world's population will live in cities. So cities like we are in right now. Cities are where the greatest progress on climate change can be made. Cities generate more than 70% of the global fossil fuel greenhouse gases emissions, making them a major priority and the starting point for the energy transformation. Electric utilities are playing a vital role in working with communities to provide a smart energy future. And the schematic on the left will just show you sort of what's comprised of a smart city: smart street lighting, smart transportation, smart buildings, urban farming, intelligent lighting. The city of Chicago, for example, has installed smart lighting in downtown Chicago so that in the parks and areas where they might have a concert going on, when the concert lets out and the people leave the concert venue, the lights suddenly get brighter. I mean, there is these sensors built in. So the idea of smart lighting, intelligent street lighting, and so forth. It was mentioned in my bio, I do a lot of work with LUMA, which is the utility in Puerto Rico. And you'll remember back in 2017, the hurricane decimated the island of Puerto Rico. People were without power for years, and we are now rebuilding the grid there, looking at it differently. And one of the things that we've begun to install there are smart street lighting and intelligent street lighting with sensors and so forth. Data analytics and intelligence services also play a big part in smart cities. Next. And this past year, we launched a new initiative at T&D called the IEEE Smart Cities Pavilion. So we had an area on the T&D floor in New Orleans. Show of hands, by the way, how many people were at T&D in New Orleans? Okay, 4, 5, 6 people, yes. So great event. It is our biggest event for IEEE. I encourage you to go to the next one. It's every 2 years. The next one will be held in Anaheim, which is a little closer than New Orleans, a little easy to get to from Malaysia. You can take a direct flight into LAX, and I encourage you to attend. We will repeat this again in Anaheim. It will be our Smart Cities Pavilion. ABB, you'll see the photo over on the right, brought their race car, which is their Formula One electric car. They had that on display. We had vendors there that had various displays, anything to do with smart cities. We had a stage set up. You see a presentation happening on the left where people gave presentations, shared experiences on the implementation of smart cities around the world, electric vehicle charging stations, and all these other various technologies were part of the Smart Cities Pavilion. Next. So just a little bit on LEDs and smart technologies. They're used for energy efficiencies. LEDs can save, believe it or not, up to 70% in terms of savings. Additional energy savings of 20+% with dimming capabilities, operational and maintenance optimization and cost reduction, 20+ years of lifespan for LEDs. They reduced the frequency of maintenance and replacement up to 7% of the total cost. There's accurate failure identification and solutions, predictive maintenance and route planning, increased roadway and pedestrian safety is another big advantage. Automatically increasing light output in crosswalks and conflict areas. I gave the example earlier of Chicago, Commonwealth Edison implementing smart street lighting there. They can include a system to prevent or inhibit violent areas. They're also human and environmentally friendly. There's mitigation that we can do with disturbance on human health and wildlife. So this will definitely be a trend that will continue to take off around the world. This idea of smart streetlights. Next. More than just lights. There's LED luminaries, various advantages to implementing these sensors that can be put on them as well, and they can allow citizen information and participate, report issues, mobile apps. Street lighting is the first step and one of the most viable initiatives towards smart cities. Next. There's actually whole trade shows and conferences just on smart cities and smart street lighting. So our customers, this is something that's definitely changed, right, in our industry. As mentioned earlier, when I first got involved in the industry, our customers really didn't pay too much attention to the utilities. They got the bill once a month. Oftentimes it was called the light bill, right? Oh yeah, my light bill came in the mail, and I'm a ratepayer, and you just pay your bill and send your check in, and off you went. But now customers are much more demanding, right? They're asking more questions. They want to know where their electricity is coming from. They realize that electric power is a necessity now, a necessity for our everyday life. The customers also want to advance a sustainable and equitable energy future for all. They're part of this. They're part of the, they look at their phones and they want to know, okay, my outage is happening now. When am I going to get my lights back on? They no longer call the utility. They're interacting with the utility in a different way. Customers are empowered as well. They're installing smart thermostats in their homes. They're installing smart lighting in their homes, Nests, and everything else. Utilities are partnering more with customers than what they used to. They're not taking them for granted. They are forming new roles within the utilities. We had an interesting panel at T&D in New Orleans, and one of my panelists, I moderated a panel on decarbonization for the industry, was Dave Ellis, and Dave is Senior Vice President and Chief Customer Officer of Entergy. So there's such a role. It's a Senior Vice President role at the big utility, and his concern is the customer. And he went on to describe how the customers in the Entergy territory, a lot of them can't even afford to think about EVs, and how the customers are different. So he's there to really represent the voice of the customer. Customers want more information. Obviously, they're more tech savvy these days as our younger customers move up. They've grown up with these technologies. They want to know energy usage, energy efficiency. They're used to getting text alerts now from the utilities on what's happening with their power. Next. So things have changed for the customer for sure. And a lot of the utilities too have also implemented different things, like ComEd in Chicago has implemented an online marketplace where customers can purchase energy efficient products. They can do research. They can research on, okay, here's where my power is coming from. Here's where my renewable sources are coming from. Another big trend is microgrids, right? How many have had some experience with microgrids or know a little bit about them or read up on them? Okay, well, if you want to find out more information about microgrids, again, you can go to the PES Resource Center. We've had some great panels on microgrids, papers. There's whole tracks on microgrids. ISGT, that series of conferences that we have throughout the year, always has a few presentations on microgrids. So what is a microgrid? A microgrid is a group of interconnected loads and distributed energy resources within clearly defined electrical boundaries that acts as a single controllable entity with respect to the grid. A microgrid, according to the U.S. Department of Energy, can connect and disconnect from the grid to enable it to operate in both grid-connected or island mode. So it's this whole idea of creating sort of an island. After Superstorm Sandy, which is up in the northeast part of the United States, in the New Jersey area, that's when we first saw microgrids become very popular. The interest grew, and it was fed by the need for more resilience. And that's still what's feeding the need for microgrids today, is this goal of resilience. Data centers are also an increasing source of microgrid growth because they're always on requirements. Interesting story, the picture there that I have on the bottom of my slide is a solar microgrid in Australia. Next. Recently, an executive from Commonwealth Edison was telling me out of Chicago, they just had a brand new customer come on board, and seeing the word data center reminded me to tell you this story. Their new customer, who was their largest customer that came on board, was not a hospital. It wasn't something like the Twin Towers here in Malaysia, or a big integrated circuit plant or anything like that. Guess what it was? It was a data center. So data centers are becoming much more prevalent and important in our industry. The Googles and Facebooks of the world have these huge data centers where they have to be always on. I can't overstate reliability enough when it comes to these data centers. And so there have been some interesting panel discussions and papers given about handling of data centers at recent PES events. So if you have an interest in that, be looking for some more information to come out. That's definitely a trend we're going to continue to see grow. Hydrogen is another one. Hydrogen is a sort of a new topic and not so new, but hydrogen will be a crucial clean energy resource for a carbon-free future. Hydrogen produced with renewable energy has the potential to help generate electricity 24/7 with virtually no greenhouse gas emissions. Many utilities are looking at hydrogen as a way to decarbonize their fleets. A lot of them have included this in their long-range strategic plans and R&D efforts. Amazon, for example, has a goal of being 100% renewable by 2025, and they want to be net zero carbon by 2040. Amazon has announced a green hydrogen deal with Plug Power, using fuel for forklifts in some vehicles for delivery. And the photo you see is of their forklift in one of their warehouses. Next, Amazon, another new player. Like, who would ever think you'd hear these new players back when I joined the industry in the 1990s? Google, Facebook, Metco, I think is the name of the Meadow, something like that is the parent company, right? Amazon, AWS, all these new players, and a lot of them are starting to get more active with IEEE PES. We had the head of energy from Microsoft speak at last year's ISGT conference. You know, it's interesting hearing from some of these new players in our industry. Definitely a trend we see happening. This is a shot of the IEEE Electrification magazine. As a member, you get this magazine for free. And on the cover is hydrogen electric aircraft technologies. So something that we'll be seeing in the future for sure, and hydrogen powered aircraft. Next. So a summary, before I touch on another important event we'll be happening at IEEE PES, is there's an emphasis on three things, or four things: decarbonization, digitalization, so digital substations, IEC 61850, and the implementation of these digital activities, resilience, and reliability. Electricity will be more variable with an emphasis on distributed energy resources and batteries. DERs will increase significantly through growth of behind-the-meter solar, wind, and storage. How will decarbonization be achieved? Two ways: electrification of our transportation system and our fleet, and building and investing in electrification, but we all need to do our part, all of us. And as I mentioned earlier, all of the various stakeholders. Our goal is to provide electric power, which is affordable, reliable, secure, and environmentally sustainable. We all need to work together to drive down carbon emissions and deliver a clean energy future. So that's the summary. And next, I want to tell you about an important event coming up, which really speaks to the trends and transformation of our industry. And that is a brand new conference, I'm pleased to announce, will be held next year. It's called our Grid Edge Technologies Conference and Exhibition. It's an IEEE Power and Energy PES conference. It'll be in San Diego, California, next. So you say, well, what is this Grid Edge and what is this all about? Next. It really covers all of these new areas of focus. Most of these topics we touched on either yesterday or I touched on in my talk this morning: microgrids, smart grids, cybersecurity, not only cybersecurity, but physical security as well, energy storage, Internet of Things, EVs, grid modernization, energy management, telecommunications, DG, asset management, metering, monitoring, data management, data analytics, all that I think are exciting things that are happening in the electric power industry today, and why we have to encourage so many young people to join our industry, right? All of these things that really weren't happening back when I joined in the early 1990s. So we will bring together all of these various participants from electric utilities, academics, transportation planners, policymakers, startups, big tech, design consultants, all under one roof in San Diego next April. Next April 10th through the 13th. There'll be a conference portion and an expo portion. The conference will be for 3 days and the expo will be for 2 days. There'll be 40 plus technical panels, 60,000 square feet of exhibit space, 4 technology stages on the exhibit floor. If you have a startup or know somebody that has a startup, there'll be a pitch contest as well and competition. There'll be a PhD dissertation challenge as well for those of you that are working on your PhDs. And you can get more information on all this on our website. There's a full website, including a video that's been established. We have a great team behind it that's been planning now for well over a year from industry. Next. And this is just a look at some of the speakers that will be speaking next April, from the president and CEO of IEEE to the president or the CEO of Siemens Grid Software. Catherine Stemson is the president and CEO of Avangrid, big utility in the US. Senior vice president of Oracle, president of Honeywell. Shay Brahamiya, many of you know, she's senior vice president of LUMA Energy. Senior Vice President of Encore, big utility in Texas. Senior Vice President of Portland General Electric, San Diego Gas and Electric. Demir Novasil for Quanta Technologies, the global lead for utilities for Microsoft, the Executive Vice President of Eaton, head of New York Power Authority, one of the heads of NERC, Mark Lobby, and the SVP of Southern California Edison. So that's just a brief look at some of the executives that are already signed up to address, but it'll be not only utility executives, but all of us in the room as well that are invited and encouraged to participate. The call for papers has already, the deadline has passed. We received over 100 submissions, which was great. In addition to that, I think there's 40 or 50 submissions that were made for panels. So it'll be a combination of panels and papers that will be given. Next. So it's next April 10th to the 13th. And here are some of the participants. Utilities, if you come from a utility, you can send 10 utility personnel for only $1,000, so $100 registration. It's a very low registration fee on purpose to attract more utilities. Next. And Connect in sunny San Diego. Join us April 10th to the 13th. Next. And my email address is up on the screen in case you want to contact me. I'm also on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me there. I regularly post things that are happening for IEEE PES around the world. I may have time for one question, or are we out of time?
We have, I think, what, 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes. Okay. Well, before we open the floor to questions, I want to thank each and every one of you for inviting me to be here today. It's been an honor and a privilege to address you. I hope to see you at a future IEEE PES event. I'm hoping my bag will arrive tonight so I can wear a suit to our banquet. And again, let's give the local organizing committee a big round of applause.
So the floors are now open for Q&A. Yeah, okay, just introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello. I'm Ram Kumar. I'm from India. I represent POSOCO, a system operator of India. We manage the world's largest synchronous grid. We have integrated 150 gigawatt of renewable energy. Thank you. And this question is about RE integration only. I think IEEE has to foster research on 2 areas. The first area is about understanding the climate gods, because we all know how intermittent the weather is. It is not just a intraday problem, it is a problem of unit commitment also. To give a perspective, I work for the southern region of India as a system operator, managing a grid of installed capacity of more than 1 lakh megawatt or 100 gigawatt. On a Monday, I have seen the wind energy is 13,000 megawatt. On Friday, it's going to absolute bottom, 200 megawatt, 300 megawatt. So the problem is, how should we commit the unit? So I see very few research going in understanding the weather gods. Till now, we have only 2 weather models based on which every forecast is dependent on. One is GFS and other is a European model. So we need lots and lots of researches to be done to understanding our weather parameters so that we can integrate all the RE available and that has been connected to the grid.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, and that's why it's of course called a variable power source, and we have this variability. And I think the gentleman that was here yesterday from Malaysia, and he was the chief regulator from Malaysia, mentioned that now more than ever, accurate and advanced forecasting is necessary, right? And the challenge that we have now as a result of this is the additional challenge of climate change. So we just had a hurricane that was going to almost hit California, which you never see happening. So to your point, you have windy days and then boom. And there was a presentation made at a PES event last year from the gentleman from Vermont, from Velco, which is the Vermont Electric Power Company up in Vermont. And Vermont has more renewables installed than any other state in the United States. They are heavy, heavy, heavy into solar. Every school, for example, in Vermont has solar installed on the roof. It's mandated. And, but they plotted it all out, and there were 5 days in a row where the solar panels were covered up by snow, because it does snow in Vermont, right? And the wind wasn't blowing. So where do you get your power, you know what I mean, on those days? And so they had their backups. But this is something where we have to continue to look at models, to your point, and no, comment well taken. And I don't know if anybody else has a comment related to that, or Jessica, if you have anything to add.
We have a working group out of our 21 technical committees.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on the working group. You can get with Jessica and she'll get you on that. It would be great to have your input, please.
Yeah. And my next question is about what you have told about this solar panels covered with snow. We have done a lot of research on microgrids, but now we feel as a country, we feel it's the time for that integrated grid, a world as a grid, because we don't know intermittency and all. We have a very sunny day at one part of the world, and the other is having a completely snowy day or a cloudy day. So microgrids is lacking reliability. So the question is about reliability. When the reliability comes by integrating the grid, and it also helps in saving the resources. So in this area also, we feel that there should be enough research on interconnecting the grids.
Good point. Good point. No, excellent. I agree. We need to definitely consider that. I see your point. Microgrids definitely, though, are part of resilience, right? In the event that there's a power outage, you could sort of roll in one of these microgrids, an island, and that's one of the reasons why they became so popular, right? In the U.S. was when Hurricane Sandy came in and knocked power out for everyone. We were able to have these microgrids or island power. But it's not the only solution. We've got to continue to look at other solutions out there too.
Because I keep discussing with many of the researchers in and around my place, but everyone is interested in microgrids, but there is no motivation or being a push from the core or central that we need to work upon integrating the country, integrating the grids also. Now we have largest technologies, 1100 kV available in the China, 1200 kV research going on in India. So maybe we have to think in that direction. These are my two inputs.
Good point. Thank you very much. I think we're out of time, right? But I will be here today and tonight, of course, and all day tomorrow. So please approach me with any other questions that you may have and comments. And thank you very much again. Much appreciated.
Wayne, I think we can allow for one more questions while waiting for the panelists to be prepared. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you. This is Nagaraju from NEOM in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you.
You concluded saying that we all need to work together for this transition. In one of your slides, you showed who are those, like utilities, independent power producers, academics, and consumers. But one of the key players you missed, probably just a note, industry, manufacturing industry.
Yes.
At NEOM, we are facing that, we're seeing that, there's a huge backlog for the all major manufacturing companies, billions of dollars. And we have targets of building our future cities by 2030, 2035, in that range. So I don't know if you have any industry representation here, but there is a huge gap in reality, where the research is much ahead, but there is nothing to build.
That's right. No, it's an excellent point. I'll actually revise my slide. I thought that I had industry up there, but I guess I didn't. So thanks for pointing that out. I'll add that extra bullet, industry. There's a huge issue, of course, happening right now with the supply chain shortage, right? Transformers, power transformers are out well over a year. I'll be interested when I tour the transformer manufacturer plant tomorrow to see what their lead time is for power transformers. And it's not only the transformers, but the components. We're having a big issue at LUMA in Puerto Rico, finding replacement parts for our breakers, our circuit breakers, even simpler things like surge arrestors, bushings, and all of these various components. It's a big issue. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed for sure. Yeah, I think that some of the blame could be put on COVID, but you can only blame the pandemic and COVID so long. You know what I mean? I think it goes beyond that for sure. But my message in that slide that I had up there earlier is we have to all be involved in this. Let's face it, Germany made a crucial mistake when they decided, in my opinion, this is not IEEE's opinion, but my personal opinion, when they decided to get away from nuclear and no longer buy nuclear from France and decided to go with natural gas, and they decided to get the natural gas from Russia. Well, you see the situation that they're in now. Well, who made that decision? Not engineers, not industry, to your point, politicians made that decision. Yes, you have to have government, you have to have the politicians around the table, but engineers have to be involved in that. And that's why the CEO that we heard speak yesterday from the Malaysian regulator, it's a wonderful example, I think, of having an engineer who is your chief regulator, because you're not going to get into those other types of issues and problems. And so my point is that you have to have all these parties around the table. And that's really what IEEE PES attempts to do. Of course, we can't get involved in politics. We won't. It's not part of our mission. But what we will do is get the various parties around the table. So, for example, at next year's general meeting in Orlando, Florida, we're going to have a panel made up of regulators from around the world to discuss the utility of the future. We had a panel at T&D in New Orleans that was looking at the industry past, present, and future, and it was made up of industry. So Dr. Ed Schweitzer from Schweitzer Engineering, founder of Schweitzer, was on the panel. Dr. Demir Novisa was on the panel. The head of Entergy was on the panel, the local utility, and we had a regulator and a academician on the panel. So we had the various parties represented, industry to your point. We had utilities, politicians, regulators, and academics. And it's when all of those parties get together around the table and we work together, that's when the best results come about. It's only the way to do it. You know, the old saying, together is better, and it is. And so hopefully I addressed your question, but thanks for the input. I'll definitely add that to my slide. Good point. It's oversight on my part. Any other?
No, I think I think that's all for the sessions. Thank you, Wayne, for nice presentation, and also to the audience for nice engagement. I want you to be on stage for a while.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Win, for your marvelous presentation on the title Trends and Transformation of the Electric Power Industry. To conclude the third keynote session, I would like to invite Professor in Senior Dr. Zainal Abidin once again to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Win. Thank you, Mr. Win and Professor in Senior Dr. Zainal Abidin. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a short break for the preparation of the forum session for 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, the event will begin shortly. Please be seated and kindly turn off or set your smartphone to silent mode throughout the event. Your cooperation is highly appreciated. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the forum session. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Michael Joseph to moderate the forum for today. Please welcome Mr. Michael Joseph.
Good morning. Thank you very much to distinguished guests, our speakers, participants to POWERCON Day 2, which has been organized by the IEEE Power and Energy Society. My name is Michael Joseph, and I'm with SSNA Power Consultancy, whereby we look at bringing solutions in the power industry to support energy transitions, as well as enabling a carbon-free that we've been talking about today. And the title of our forum this morning is Embracing Advanced Technology in the Power and Energy System for Sustainable Development. And we have three panelists in our midst this morning. Just before we get into introducing the panelists, I just want to just point out something. Energy transition is a perspective of technology. You're looking at business models. You've got to consider financing, government policies, and as well as exploring the digital innovation in the electricity system. And these are things that, like what we have heard from Wayne sharing earlier, how do all these things come in as a holistic approach when we look at be it carbon, low carbon cities or smart grid systems. So today, as we hear the presentation, the forum, I would encourage you to keep an open mind, curate new conversations with your fellow conference participants, as well as look what's the passion that you have in terms of what are the messages, what are the lessons that we can take away, which will help each one of us to be a much better person and to improve the society that we have today. So with that, the session is going to be in a panel mode. So do take note of your questions that you have, thoughts that come to your mind. And at the end, we'll open it up to the participants to raise questions and answers. So let me introduce our speakers for this morning. I'll start off from here on my left with Dr. Mohammad Arifin. He's currently the Managing Director of TNB Research Sdn Bhd with more than 28 years in the electricity supply industry. He has been covering various aspects of the industry, like the aspects of fuel handling, management, power plant operations, education, training, research and development. He's an active member at the University of Tenaga National Industry Advisory Panel, both for the bachelor and master's programs of the mechanical engineering. He's a member of the Research Expert Panel Workshop, Mission-Oriented Research, as well as Hybrid Energy Systems for University Technology Petronas. Let's give him a hand to welcome him. Following on next, we have Dr. Eng Sik Mang, who is currently the Head of Research and Development for Sarawak Energy, a vertically integrated power utility and energy development company that serves the Sarawak, which is in the east coast of Malaysia. He's driving the technological innovation within the company and focusing on key areas such as clean energy exploration, energy management, grid solutions, environmental sciences, and autonomous and robotic technology. So these are interesting topics that you could see how the utility is also moving towards those areas. And he's also passionate about translating research into practical applications, cultivating a disruptive innovation. Today, I think when we're looking here as industry players, we've got to see how do we make things to be disruptive? How do we bring the change about it? And that's what will bring a better society that we have. Let's give Dr. Eng a hand. And next we have Engineer Yao Chao Fung, who has more than 20 years working experience in a large consulting firm, and he has established his own M&E consulting called Durian Professionals since 2011. Engineer Yao plays an active role with the Institute of Engineers Malaysia, primarily encompassing professionals in the engineering in Malaysia. He is an IEM EXCOM member as well as a council member, and he's currently the AER Head of Commissioner under the Asian Federation of Engineering Organization, whereby he advocates mobility for engineers within ASEAN countries. His expertise in electrical engineering has proved to be valuable as he chairs the ASEAN Engineering Inspectorates, Electrical Installation Steering Committee. So let's give him a hand to welcome him too. So as you see, we've got a good team of expert panels here. And just to start off the session for this morning, I'll just start off with the session with Dr. Muhammad Harifin with a question on looking at, as what we have already heard from Wayne's topic on the hydrogen. So let's take it up from there. Hydrogen is poised to play a key role in our energy transition. What are your thoughts and initiatives with regard to TNB, that's the National Utility of Malaysia, taking that up? And secondly, as the other aspect, and we look at the ammonia combustion experiments that has been going on for the coal-fired plants to decarbonize in the power sector, that has been recently spoken about in our media. Could you share some of the thoughts and the highlights about it? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for having me in this very prestigious event. Okay, in response to the question given to me, for TNB, we are committed to our energy transition program, and for that, last year, TNB has announced its aspiration to achieve the net zero, carbon net zero by 2050. And for that, in the medium term, TNB plan to reduce its emission intensity by 35% by the year 2035. So for that to happen, among the initiatives that TNB will be taking is decommissioning or early retirement of our coal-fired power plant, and also to go more towards renewable, in particular solar, hydro, and others. And with regard to we are working with our collaborators and partners, in particular IHI and Petronas, to test the feasibility of having a co-firing of ammonia with coal, so that at least we can extend the life of our coal power plant and to reduce the emission intensity, to achieve our aspiration. And the test has been carried out in our facility in TNB Research with the support from our partner, IHI, as I mentioned earlier. And the outcome so far is very promising. We have achieved the carbon emission reduction quite significantly, I think about 40%, as well as SOx. So in other words, it shows that there is a possibility. But of course, in order to make it in reality, you have to consider the other factors as well. For example, where will you get the ammonia from? That's why we are working with Petronas in this particular collaboration. And in response to your question on hydrogen, again, this is another option that TNB is considering. And we are working with Petronas in this aspect. Recently, we have a MOU signed between TNB and Petronas to look at this possibility, not only hydrogen, but also other technologies, for example, carbon capture and storage. So with regard to hydrogen, we are looking at possibility of introducing hydrogen as our alternative fuel, particularly for our for our gas turbine fleet. And recently, we were given the go-ahead by the government to repower our old Parker power plant, the old gas turbine power plant, to be repowered to make it hydrogen ready, if I'm not mistaken, by 2027 or 29, yeah, about that. So in other words, those are the initiatives taken by TNB in order to achieve our aspiration of carbon net zero. In the discussion, in the debate of hydrogen, I think maybe you're all aware, the question always arises: where do you get the hydrogen from? That will determine whether you are really a net zero carbon or adding another carbon. So those are, I mean, there are certain options that we are considering. For example, using our solar farm or large-scale solar. But I think for this particular endeavor, maybe we are looking at floating solar, looking at the vast or big area of water body that we have in Peninsula, especially in our reservoirs or in our hydro, that looking at the numbers, quite promising. And of course, the other part of it is that, the regulatory, when we talk about open bidding for large-scale solar, so that is another process of getting the plant ready. But in particular for hydrogen production, where we are not bound to the ST, for example. So in other words, there are opportunities for us to explore, not only for our own consumption, but possibly for export. I believe SAB, Sarawak Energy, has been more advanced in that area because they are blessed with so much hydro. So in other words, those are the initiatives, the options. And for the MB research in particular, we are also looking at the options. For example, like SOFC, fuel cell, using hydrogen, So in other words, those are still at the early stage of research. So I think, I don't know whether you have the opportunity to visit MB research later, but if you have the opportunity, we can share more information on what we are doing with regard to energy transition and many others. Thank you.
Thanks. Good to hear that the different initiatives that are going on within TNB research, moving along the directions that what we've been hearing across the global side. And as we move on, as what Dr. Arifin was talking about, Sarawak being abundant with hydro, let's move on to Dr. Ng. Although hydro has been abundant in Sarawak, how does hydrogen poised to play as a key role in the energy transition? And what are your thoughts and initiatives that SEB is taking up?
Right, thank you very much. I think first of all as well that I would like to express my thanks for the organizer for having me here to share a little bit in terms of the the transition thing that we have been doing. But before that, I would just like to say that some of you might not know that what Sarawak Energy is. Basically, we are quite equivalent to Tenaga over in the west, but we are on the east side from the island of Borneo. So we are the sole company that serves the whole state. So we're vertically integrated all the way from mining, all the way to behind the meter. So we have all the services across there. Now on the topic of hydrogen, this is how we look at hydrogen is that we can consider ourselves one of the pioneers within Southeast Asia region at the moment for hydrogen. So we have launched our first, we call integrated hydrogen production and refilling station for Southeast Asia on hydrogen. So I think how we perceive hydrogen is that this is coming. How we look at it is also reimagined, I think just now from the keynote as well, that we are looking at how we look things at a different perspective, as a different timeline that we are looking at. Because someone still a lot of public basically still put that question on, what are you guys doing with hydrogen? Is this the future of it? Hydrogen has been there for years, fuel cell is not a new technology. But what our argument here is that, looking at a time frame, and basically the ingredient that you can do hydrogen. So for Sarawak Energy, we are quite blessed. I will say that from the year 2010, we only have around 8% of hydro. Within a decade time, we have managed to increase it to 78% of a generation mix, total of 5,400 megawatt. Then 3,000 over it is from large hydro, and one is still on the way coming. Palay is expected to come in operation 2027. So that's the perspective that, when our state government try to look into this energy transition, we look at ourselves as quite strategic. If you look at our location in the Borneo, so we are at the heart of ASEAN and then also the heart of Asia Pacific. So if you want to share that renewable, one of the things that you do, of course, I think just now as well, from the audience, we said that, we can connect the world up with grid. But if you're looking at alternative, you can literally connect them up with hydrogen as well, because hydrogen is a it's a carrier, an energy carrier that you can use from that perspective. So that's how, you know, we started that. We look at it that we don't think that we should push something that is not, you know, workable for us. So for solar energy, we push it because we think that we have abundant of what they call hydropower that we can use. It's renewable basically. So with that, it will be clean, and you know, you can cut carbon out from the whole value chain that we are talking in that sense. So that is where we are coming from. But of course, to expand that, we cannot just be working alone in that sense. So now we are also talking to our neighbors, which is Kalimantan, and then you know that Nusantara is being, you know, on the way of moving towards the island as well. So if we take this as an opportunity as well for us to work together with our partners. So now we are talking to the Indonesian part and say that, you know, well, how can we work together in developing this in a more sustainable way? Because no point that, you know, we are just competing among ourselves, but we need to work together, everyone. You know, just now we are talking about industry, things like that, but country to country as well, there is a role for us to work together. So in terms of hydrogen, I think that is what we are pushing through as well now, and try to see whether we can have the first initiative for what we call the Borneo grid, so that we can link it now with Indonesia side as well. And in that case, then the power in terms of the capacity, because currently we are standing alone in a, you know, so-called a big grid, a big micro grid. If you can understand that, because we are still standing alone, we are not connected yet at the moment. The only line that we have is to Kalimantan, but just a very short line. But that limit a lot of this spinning capacity that we have for better use in terms of, let's say, hydrogen in that sense. So I think that is on the hydrogen part, but in terms of the ammonia part, we are not there. Basically, we are not at the moment for solar energy. We are not looking at that aspect yet, but we are more looking towards the hydrogen side, right?
Yep, thanks. As Dr. Ng was just mentioning about the hydrogen aspect, I had the opportunity to travel on one of their buses, which was hydrogen powered, and it goes very much like an EV vehicle, very silent mode and easy to go around, yeah, within the city that they are providing. Now let's go on to Engineer Yao. You know, he's being from the industry side. So as for coming from the industry, you look at aspects of energy efficiency and renewable applications. What are some of the initiatives that you have seen as you're doing consulting work and being involved with those coming out there? Now, this can give an idea to our audience to consider some of these aspects of it. Maybe you could share some things.
First of all, thank you, IEEE again, for inviting me for this panelist forum. I'm indeed glad to share to all, speaking from the industry, like what Michael has mentioned. Now, of course, when we talk about industry, we are the ones that actually apply what is the theory and, of course, practical way, where we actually put in things like, for example, what you have mentioned, energy efficiency and also renewable energy. Now, of course, before we even talk about EE and RE, there's always this perception, especially the conventional industry. When you talk about conventional industry, they will talk about just receiving power supply from TNB and, of course, ICB as well, and apply it to the applications in the industry. For example, factories. So I'll buy power from the utility providers, and I apply it, and of course run my day-to-day activities. For example, processes, or even the commercial ones like shopping malls and so on. So in order for people like us in the industry, or even consultants, or even what they call the ones that is actually doing the design for them, there is always this perception and, of course, mindset that they want it to be conventional. So in order for us to move towards E and RE, there's always this issue of money. How much do I need to spend? How much do I need to actually invest? And what is the ROI about? So it's all about how we actually need to convince the industry what is the importance of EE and RE. And of course, at the later part now is of SDG and also ESG compliance. So talking about EE and RE, I think we start with EE first, energy efficiency. I believe there are a lot of times when we in the industry, we approach the clients. It's all about talking about how we can save energy, and of course, save the electricity bill, and how we can actually enhance what has been used. For example, like the air conditioning systems, the usage of power in the processes and all that. How do we save and, of course, use energy efficient equipments and so on? So I think recently as well, I think there is already a plan to actually enact the Energy Efficiency Act. Of course, still ongoing. Hopefully, it could be actually materialized soon. So that will actually push the industry to the next level where energy efficiency is actually a matter that is actually a compulsory thing soon to the industry as well as also the large power users. So energy efficient EE actually plays a role, and we felt that this is one of the way. And of course, the other one is of course renewable energy. Okay, there are a lot of things that can be done in renewable energy, for example, in industry or even in large-scale users, like for example, industry or data centers and so on. Because the implementation of RE, for example, solar rooftops, or even things like biogas, biomass, and also the usage of hydro as well in some of the areas. So I think these two, the RE concept, I think is still, I believe everyone is actually looking at it. But again, the concept and of course how we actually educate the industry on the benefit as well as also how it actually can help in saving the energy and of course compliance to now I think everyone is talking about it, SDG and also ESG as well. So moving towards that, I think there are a lot of awareness. I believe I think speaking from the industry as well as also association. Today, of course, I'm wearing the hat of the Institution of Engineers Malaysia, IEM. Well, we are the one of the largest institution NGOs in engineering with over 50,000 members. So I think we have been trying to educate the members, engineers or engineering practitioners on the latest in EE and RE. What are the benefits? What are the technologies? And how can it be applied in the industry and so on? And in fact, I think we work with closely with, I think in branches as well. Like for example, we have branches all over Malaysia. We work with, I think we have a Sarawak branch, I think working closely with Sarawak Energy as well as also in the HQ as well. So I think in order for us to create the awareness of EE and RE, I think we have to work together and we have to create awareness, educate, and of course work together in the industry. So it's not only the industry, we have to work together with the authorities, the regulators, also the academicians in the universities. We have to actually work together to actually ensure the EE and RE plans are carried out, and of course, this will actually benefit the whole industry per se.
So thank you, Engineer Yao. I think it's important when we look back at as industry, whether you're coming from the industry side or from the academic side as researchers, to always to encourage energy efficiency. Right starts from our home, with our friends, wherever we are. It's a part that each of us got to take it up and do. Just not left with the heads of units or departments. You know? So let's come back now for the next round with regard to some questions to Dr. Muhammad Arifin. You've heard about what he's mentioned about the hydrogen-based projects that are initiatives that's coming up in Parker. But let's look at another aspect of it is what are the other applications towards battery energy storage systems? You know, are there anything else, any other storage systems that are being considered? And probably you could highlight a little bit on that part of it.
Thank you. Now, with regard to battery storage, I think as we know, usually it is associated with the RE, renewable energy system. You know, when we have a sufficient capacity of renewable, for example, like solar, because of the issue of intermittency, then the storage become, you know, the key enabler. So for Malaysia, I think as you know, at the moment, the mix or generation mix with regard to solar is still, you know, growing, but not as big as compared to other countries. So with regard to storage, at the moment, of course, the technology, with regard to technology, the dominant technology is lithium-ion, and it is always kind of the option that will be attached with, for example, like in the solar system. But beyond that, at TMB Research, we also look at or explore other potential or type of energy storage. You know, the likes of the flow battery and the likes. But recently, we also look at the possibility of having a pump storage. Because I think, as you all know, energy storage in various forms, it comes with them their strengths and weaknesses, issues and potentials. So, and of course, cost. So in other words, we also look at other potential, for example, like pump storage. And for that, we work with one Australian university to look at the potential of pump storage in Malaysia. And because I think, as you all know, pump storage is very much established in terms of technology, is well proven. And well, maybe in terms of concern with regard to, for example, like chemical and things like that, is not an issue. But of course, there are other issues associated with pump storage. So in other words, we are looking at it as well. And just now we mentioned about hydrogen. Yes, we look at that as well. So in other words, and to share with you with regard to lithium ion, at the moment we have a project on virtual power plant, VPP. In this project is in collaboration, partnership with some Korean consortium. So again, looking ahead, because we foresee with the coming distributed energy resources and all these potential business opportunities beyond the kilowatt hour that a utility can offer in the future. So we look at BPP can be another area that we would like to explore. And it is currently being tested. We have 4 sites of this battery storage in Klang Valley. And hopefully, if that, we can demonstrate the functionality and the viability of it, then perhaps something that we can offer, especially when the DER is a lot more, more robust in our system. And I think looking at the direction, I think it's going towards that, with all the NEMs and all those initiatives by the government. So again, those are the options that we are looking at with regard to battery storage. There are other technologies that we are still, but I think still at the early stage. For example, like looking at the what you call that, compressed air and the mechanical, but those are only at the early stage of exploration. But the one that we think could be of interest, apart from lithium ion, is possibly pump storage. Thank you.
Right, thanks. So you get to see some of the other initiatives that is there. Yeah, because I'm involved personally so on some energy storage initiatives, and today there are many that are up there. And like what you have said, each of it has its pros and cons when you start to evaluate them. Dr. Ng, as you just highlighted about hydrogen generations, that's something that is Sarawak that is kind of actively looking at. Are there any other energy storage systems like what that's going on here with TNB that you have, such as battery energy storage systems or anything else that you're considering for energy transition?
Right, on that issue is again, I would like to say that Sarawak is quite placed that currently we're 70% hydro. The storage is there already. So sometimes we do take ourselves as the battery of ASEAN if we have that connection ready. So now we are also exploring that if we can put an under cable to the west here, then if we are connected with ASEAN, in fact we are already so-called the battery of ASEAN, because you have large hydro dam that is stable in that sense. And then we are abundant in terms of rainfall. So in that case, we haven't looked into even the opportunity of pumping it up back as a storage, because currently the influx to some point that we still need to open up our gate just to throw away the water, which is money in that case. We try not to do that, but sometimes we do have heavy rainfall that we need to do that. So in terms of that big storage, we are already there. We are quite happy with that. But of course, we will not say that, oh, you are so gifted that you don't do anything. No, because like what we just mentioned just now, climate change, all these are threat to us as well. What if one day that the rain start to not falling down? So we also look into other storage as well. Of course, battery storage is something, like lithium ion is something that we are considering. Now, part of it is we use it to, face off some of our coal power plant. So the first one that we are looking at is for the power plant in Kuching, the only generation basically that we are passing off. But how do you replace it? Because we still have large generation from the hydro side. So what we are looking at is just to put the battery there, in the heart of Kuching, the city center there, just to make sure that you have that power stability when you need it. Because we cannot just cut off and rely on our transmission lines. So what happens if there's anything that happened in between? It's a long line, a few hundred kilometers line. So what we are doing is that we put a knot of, a large battery in the city center as part of the power reliability aspect. So that is one thing that we are still doing at as well. But of course, for battery, for Sarawak is very our population. If you look at cities, we have a few big ones, but in terms of villages as well, there is a lot. So that's why in terms of rural electrification, we do use battery as the alternative, because that's the most efficient one at the moment at the market. So we just step on that as the storage. But eventually, we're also looking at how would this battery and the grid interact when the grid is going into the more rural area, when now currently are powered up by solar and battery, but when the line is in, what do you do with it? So that is currently ongoingly on how the integration will happen. I think the next thing that we are, from the R&D, this is, I would say, that is still very early stage, is that we're also looking at biofuel as something that we can store as battery. So currently, we are actively looking at the cultivation of microalgae. So we have one plot now currently on pilot. It's around 5 acres, closed system, one of the world largest. That we also look into the circular economy concept by tapping on our flue gas from the coal power plant, push it into the the microalgae cultivation facility. So with that, going down the value chain, you will get your biofuel. So biofuel is a form of energy that if you want to look at it as whether you can store it or not, it is, yes, you can store it. If you have excess, you still can export it as a source of power. But these things are easy to say. If you do it in a lab scale, no issue. The facts and figure will tell you that yes, microalgae is something very good. But in terms of scaling it up, that is the thing that when you look into the cost, the space, and things like that. So what we are doing now is just to do one big pilot, around 5 acres, see what is the impact of it, calculate what is the ROI for that, and then from there we see whether we can move forward using biofuel as one source of storage, energy storage. You want to put into that perspective, right?
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to hear. See, something that we not talked about much in this part of it. We talk about biofuels and using microalgae. So that's an idea that you see that is generating out, and we come from different parts of the world. I'm sure this thing is something that you could take it back, to apply. Engineer Yao, now we come looking at a bit on the efforts as we move from hydrogen, batteries. Let's look at digitalization. It's a new aspect in the energy industry. How is the industry progressing towards this area of development, as well as optimizing energy consumptions through digitalization?
Thank you, Michael. When we talk about digitalization, I think we are still at the infant stage. As I mentioned, there's always this conventional perception. It's okay, we have been doing it. Why do we need to actually go further? There's cost elements and so on. But I think digitalization will soon take place, especially in energy sector and in industry as well. So I give an example. Currently, I think there are a lot of initiatives, like for example, smart industry plants, smart factories, or even, for example, large-scale users like data centers and all that. So there have been actually a lot of initiative in digitalizing the energy usage as well as also consumption, and of course analyzing it. And I take a very simple way of actually looking at it. Of course, this idea came from another colleague of mine. They talk about A, B, C, D, E in industry. So what is this A, B, C, D, E? Okay, A is artificial intelligence. So I think in energy usage and energy consumption soon in industry, there will be a lot of application of AI in terms of analyzing how the energy patterns are, okay, and of course how to actually improve the energy usage and consumption, and of course utilization. So A. B is big data. So we talk about data, be compiling data, especially for smart cities and smart industrial parks. So I believe a lot of efforts are done to actually compile the data of the energy consumption, how much power they need to buy from the utility, how much they would actually generate from their own energy, renewable energies, and so on. Okay, and C is cloud computing. So we look at all the data are actually put into the cloud, for example, for smart cities and so on. Okay, and D is digitalization. So this is the hub of digitalization. I believe a lot of like energy monitoring systems nowadays, especially in industry, is all analog. So how do we actually change it to digital, and how we actually digitize all the various data? And of course, E is the last one. E is emerging technologies. So how do we as industry, for example, incorporate like battery storage or other types of storage systems? We see a lot of times when we talk about large power users like industry and data centers and so on. So we always only consume or actually consume from the utility providers. How do we actually integrate all the energy storage, energy generation, for example, from renewable energy, or even co-generation from the various type of energy generated? So all this has to be in place, and I believe digitalization will actually make it happen. And that's why I mentioned A, B, C, D, E. Artificial intelligence elements, big data, cloud computing, digitalization, and of course, usage of emerging technologies to make it happen. So of course, as I mentioned, infant stage now, how do we move from the conventional to digitalization is not to say a question mark, but I believe the industry needs to actually move forward, work with everyone, and create the awareness of ABCDE in the market. Thank you.
Good. Very good acronym, huh? ABCDE. So that is something each one can take away, right? So now as we kind of go on, like you say, from that part of it, from digitalization, let's just continue on now with Dr. Let's just hear from yourself a bit on the digitalization efforts that are coming out in the energy industry with regard to SEB in this aspect of it.
Yeah, again, I think for the utility, we wake up quite late in terms of digitalization, I would say, because all this while the power utility will take power quality as something very high in terms of the standard that they need to deliver, because people want quality power. So in that case, they will make sure that everything are manual, everything are in their hand. They have the control. The button is in front of them, not virtually that somewhere hidden in the dashboard. But eventually, we do realize that I think COVID this recent COVID pandemic did give us a very huge kind of lesson on that you need to shift over. So Strong Energy, luckily, we are not that slow in terms of shifting over. In fact, we have been crafting out our digitalization roadmap 5 years before this, and said that by 2025 we want to be a digital utility. Per se, on that means that all this needs to be connected digitally. But again, our company has been 100 years now. We have been just celebrating the centenary last year. But you can see that, why I mentioned 100 years is that you just imagine the machine that you put in 100 years ago that, some of them still working, I believe, some parts are not the whole system. Digitalization become very, very challenging in that sense. But again, what we are looking at is that we need to do it in phases. Wherever that you can do it first, you do it first. So a lot of new one, basically, the new station that we have been developing, the new generator that we have been installed. That is where digitalization becomes something very crucial. That we said that we will not want to ignore that part anymore. We want to make sure that the digitalization part is incorporated within it, so that you can do a lot of data analytics, things like that. But of course, the old one, they will look into part by part. How can you make it more efficient? That's the only thing we can do at the moment. Because no point you push it so hard in the sense that you still don't get the impact that you want, but indirectly you put in more investment to do something that is not worth doing it. So in that case, so some of this we look at alternative how you can do it. We also put it as a transition as well, just an energy transition, not putting the whole or not creating the whole system to be new, to be digitalized, but just part of those. For example, reimaging on how you just put the digital way of taking the readings, but the whole instrument is still analog, for instance, so that you can just extract the important information that you need for any of your processes that is involved. So in that case as well, like coming back to the COVID as well, that is where we also now try to remote control most of our thing. So our HQ is within, the southern part of the state, but most of our big generator are in the middle part of the northern part. It's a bit far off a little bit. So what we are doing as well, before this already, we have, I think, one of the most complete fiber optic, lay across Sarawak. So most of the, like even some of the company come over and rent some of this fiber optic from us. So we do have that initiative in place, but hopefully by 2025 we can put ourselves as one of the digital utility in that sense.
Yeah. No, I think as what Tutan says, Sarawak being a company more than 100 years old, recently I came in contact with some requests from Miri power plant, whereby the control systems are more than 25 years old. And how do we fix it? Do we have people who can do some upgrade work or to look into just the system itself? And you start to check even from Peninsula here, you don't find that expertise any longer already. So that's when you're going to force to start to change things up after that. Yeah. All right, Dr. Arifin, now we move on as we talk about energy transition, and we look at internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles. How ready is our perspective from TNB side with regard to the infrastructure, policy, as well as the standards? Because you heard Wayne just now showed about the Ford electric vehicle and everything like that. So what's our stand here in Malaysia on it?
Thank you. It's a very important question. I think now the people talk about electric vehicle as the way forward, and looks like it's a matter of when rather than if. Okay. So with regard to the infrastructure, even though TNB may not be the only entity that kind of involved or entrusted with regard to the EV infrastructure, because there are many other players or stakeholders. But we believe our readiness level as a country, especially in Peninsular Malaysia, still at the early stage. Again, everything is at the early stage. Yeah. One of there are many issues, many parameters, but one of the parameters that I think can kind of reflect that type of readiness level is the charging station. I was informed that the current level of ratio of EV chargers in Malaysia is about 2.5 EV charger to one vehicle. Okay, and the guideline or the kind of benchmark given by IEEE is to have at least 10 EV charger for one EV. Then we can say that the infrastructure, in as far as charging station is concerned, kind of ready, matured. So we are still far, but of course, the next question is: so what are we doing? I mean, when are we going to have EV chargers readily available throughout Peninsular Malaysia or throughout the country? And who's going to invest and put those EV chargers? But I think every day you read newspapers. I think almost every day everybody starts saying that they will implement, they will install so many chargers and so on. Petronas and everybody else. So with that, in that regard, TNB, I think recently in the news has announced that TNB is committed to invest about 90 million ringgit for the next 3 years in beefing up the infrastructure for the charging system. And for that, we need to work with other partners because these chargers may not be strategically located with regard to our current asset or TNB's asset. So with that, we are working with other partners like of course Petronas and others players, even the car manufacturers. So in other words, I can come back to your question. We are still at the early stage, but I think the pace of improving, enhancing our infrastructure getting much better now. I think about 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, our Prime Minister in launching the ICES conference also announced that certain regulatory framework will be introduced or will be initiated so that this ecosystem for EV in Malaysia will be, a lot more ready to embrace this new option, if you like, for mobility. And to share with you for TMB, to show our kind of commitment and emphasis on EV, recently we set up a specific or dedicated project management office on EV. And also with regard to research is concerned, TMB has indicated 5 focus areas that we as a TMB research will be focusing, and one of them is EV. But of course, we have to be selective in what we want to play, where to play, how to play, because for EV there are many other players, isn't it? The manufacturing and so on. So in other words, definitely we will not go into manufacturing of EVs, but I think there are other areas that TMB will venture into. And in fact, those are the roles that we are expected to play in order to make the ecosystem ready for EV. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So at least those who are thinking of EV vehicles in Malaysia, you can still start going out purchasing them. You know the readiness is on the way coming up there for increased. Well, before we kind of come to a close of this session, I would just like to propose to ask each of our speakers, what are some of your final thoughts? What are some of the key takeaways you would like to convey to our audience here? And what are the remarks and what are the things that you want them to remember? We can start off with Engineer Yao and follow through.
Final remarks, I believe, first of all, I think the industry, of course, is at early stage, infant stage on EE and RE. And there are a lot of things to be taken into account. And of course, a lot of awareness, especially in terms of the technology used in energy efficient equipments or even RE, solar, biogas, hydro, and so on. And of course, we also need to look at the upcoming emerging technologies. For practitioners or even industrial players, we have to always keep ourselves updated with the latest so that we can apply some of the technologies in our application in industry. And we cannot just move a step backwards where we want to be comfortable with what we have. So we have to move forward in terms of energy applications and so on. And of course, now also we are looking at, for example, I think as an engineer itself, we are not only looking at technology, but we are also looking at, for example, now energy is actually a business as well, trading of energy and so on. Of course, normally we say that we are technical bound, but I believe we have to be we have to actually put in our financial knowledge as well, because energy is no longer just applications and so on. It's a business, and there are buying and selling of power and soon. And this we have to actually get ourselves involved, and of course get ourselves get ourselves with knowledge on this as well. So I think it's not only talking about what we have, but what we are going to have soon in industry. So the message to all is don't just be comfortable with what you have on your knowledge in energy systems and so on. We have to look forward. That's why participating in this kind of forum will be good, where you meet not only local players, players from international backgrounds and so on, and you learn from them. So we definitely would learn new things from other countries as well as also other institutions and associations, because knowledge is now available, and that would actually help you to grow in your industry. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr.
I think in line with today, the topic that we have on technology, the key takeaway from my side, I think, because I'm also heading the R&D for utility. I think when you come to technology, the word re-envision or maybe reimagine, like what in our first keynote speaker just now, I think that is the word that is quite important for us, especially when we talk about transitioning in terms of energy, the industry from the energy point of view. Because sometimes we tend to see technology as something that definitely will help us and something that is advanced in front But we've forgotten that a lot of this technology doesn't work, 5, 10 years ago. It's because that the time is not there yet. A lot of time we push things through. It's just not the right time for you to push it through. That's why it gets stuck there. So nowadays, even with my own team as well, I said that you should look back on things that, has been there. Don't keep on just putting your mind in front and say that I want to just go advanced rocket science, things like that. But a lot of time that you need to look back and see what things that is already there. In fact, no need to reinvent the wheel, but you put it into the context. Even digitalization is something that we are reinventing something in a better way. We are not doing something new here, but at the end of the day, what we're looking at is data. Data has been there for years, but it's just that now is the time that we have this cloud computing, all these advanced tools to help us in that sense to look into the data at a different perspective. I think that is really important. Not to say, a lot of time that when we propose a project or we look into something like, hydrokinetic turbine or this, they say, oh, what are you doing this? I've been 50 years ago, things has been there. I always like to give an example, if you have a dripping water from the ceiling or wherever it is, and I instruct you to take a bath with that, you will say you're crazy. Just a dripping water, how can I take a bath with that? How can I even make myself wet with that? But my question, my solution to that is that nowadays you have storage, like energy storage. You can store it first. You put a pail there overnight, 2 days, 3 days, you'll get a full pail of water. You can do whatever you want with it, right? A lot of these like mini hydro things, this thing doesn't work, because the generation is so small, you cannot even use it to power up even your handphone. But I said now energy storage is that if you incorporate it with, let's say hydrogen storage, you put it for a week, just put a few more cascading system there, it will work because we have that technology already. So you need to look back sometime, not just always look in front of you and chasing something that is really, you think is rocket science, but in fact something good in your backyard, you don't use it. So I think that is that's a key takeaway that I would like to share. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Good insights. Dr. Arifin?
Thank you. I would like to share 2 points as a conclusion. One is the need for us to work together. I echo what the keynote speaker mentioned this morning, working together, because our aspiration is, is big, is global, and nobody can do it alone, not even TMB, not even SEB. So we have to work alone. And that's why I think in the news, you see TMB now working a lot with many partners, small, big, and the other thing is from the research perspective, and I think most of us are basically technologies. I mean, some may be business, but to me, I think the need to have a perseverance, belief and perseverance, because as mentioned just now, but for example, like solar or even EV, electric vehicle, TMB Research has done that many years ago in the early 90s. We have a solar house, we have a prototype of electric vehicle. But at that time, people, stare at you and, they couldn't figure out how can we monetize all this. But today, people talking about EV and they want to have soon, and solar is already flourished. So in other words, I think as researchers, as technology, we have to persevere, we have to believe in it, work on it, and God willing, the time will come when you see the fruit of your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the perseverance aspect is so important in whatever that we do, not to give up. We have pretty much run out of time. I already have some time for Q&A, but I don't think so we're going to have time for Q&A. But I'd like to thank each one of your participants for taking time to listen to it. And last but not least, to our distinguished panelists, Dr. Muhammad Arifin, Dr. Ng, and Engineer Yao. Thank you for taking your time to be here this morning and to share your thoughts and ideas on it. With that, I'd like to thank you all and pass it back on to our MC for the session.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the informative forum. To conclude the forum for session today, I would like to invite Mr. Michael Josephs to present a token of appreciation to our panel. Thank you to our panels and Mr. Michael Josephs. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our forum session for today. We are thankful to all guests, speakers, panels, and participants that has participated in this ceremony. We will have a photo session after this. We continue our technical session at the dedicated room. Participants can scan the QR code at the registration counter to check the conference program, and you can visit the exhibition by Maker and in parades located at the front of the ballroom. Thank you. For your information, the parallel session is starting in 2 minutes.